delighted to have you with us, and we're looking forward to your presentation. Dr. Baranowsky, we're very delighted that you're here and for us to benefit from your work that you're doing at the Traumatology Institute in Canada. So take it away.
Yes, I'm delighted. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really excited to be able to talk about this particular approach that we've been using. We've been having great result with it, and for anybody who has heard me speak or understands some of the work that I do, all the work that I do is really embedded in a model, a triphasic model. So I'm actually going to continue with exactly that focus. But, you know, really what we've developed is something called Thematic Map and Release, and it's really all about resolving core beliefs after trauma. And, you know, I actually really love that they've included criterion D in the new diagnostic criterion for PTSD, and that's, you know, something that I'm going to refer back to throughout the presentation today, and of course trying to give you a better understanding of how thematic map and release fits within our treatment, our trauma practice approach in general, as well as covering the actual intervention. So we have a couple of different materials that are available for people who want more detailed information after. So just be aware that I'm not going to give you everything right now, but these are the materials you need to be able to use the exercise will be available to you. So I want to thank Carol and Jane and Karen for helping to coordinate and put this together so that I can share this information with all of you and have some time to talk about this issue. So what I want to do to start with is just look at this idea of how thematic map fits into a triphasic model. Now, a triphasic model is really based largely on Herman's seminal work, her book in 1992. But really, our trauma practice, Tools for Stabilization and Recovery, which is now in its third edition, is a triphasic model. It was based on Judith Herman's triphasic model because we found that it was so important not to just take an approach and use it piecemeal, but to embed it into an approach that allows first for individuals to have a good grasp of stabilization before moving into any exercises that help them to work through trauma. And thematic map and release is a phase 2 exercise. And then finally, when we get to phase 3, we're really pulling everything together and helping people move back into a meaningful life. I want to just talk about why it's so important to think about adverse childhood experiences, and really just adverse experiences through the lifespan, because in terms of thematic map and release, we're talking about a lifetime of events that have us look at our life in a very specific way. So if we've had a lot of events in which we've seen that people can be cruel, we start to believe that life is cruel or we can't trust people. So we start to look at our lives through a certain lens and even go on a hunting expedition for reasons to believe that life is a certain way. And we know that when people experience many adverse childhood experiences, and you know, we know that the ACE studies suggest that those that experience 4 or more have increased risk of depression, chronic diseases, suicidality, lung disease, and they are much more at risk of believing certain negative things about their lives. And so, you know, I think everybody has experienced this in their practice who's been seeing patients directly, that sometimes you can work on trauma memories and they'll still be suffering and struggling with the negative beliefs. So I want to tell you a little bit about my perspective of this work in my Confessions of a Trauma Therapist, recognizing that I'm exactly like my patients in that I'm also shaped by what I experience and see. And in order for me to do well in my work, after it's actually more than 20 years of doing trauma work, I have to know what keeps me going. And a lot of what keeps me going is seeing that my work is making a difference with my clients. One of the things that I'm very much involved with is the online portal of the Traumatology Institute. We offer courses right around the globe, 42 different countries, and one of the very interesting things that we do when somebody takes a clinical traumatologist or the community and workplace traumatologist stream in our online programs is everybody has to complete a genogram. They could either do it of somebody that they know, a family member, a client, or themselves. And it's so interesting because a large number of people who take these courses choose to do a genogram of their own personal history. They're getting the opportunity to look from the inside at what are those experiences that have shaped them. And I think this is really important because here's where the negative beliefs come, because when we have a large number of experiences and they seem to keep repeating themes or beliefs, it's hard to shake those. And if we don't understand what our own themes are from the perspective of being a trauma therapist, we can also get stuck in negative beliefs. So, you know, I think the implications are pretty enormous, because what I've found is from people who submit their genograms, 100% of those genograms turn into traumograms. They are very significant trauma. And what that means is that the students who take programs with us, and there are quite a large number of them, large numbers have a history of trauma. And I look at trauma as being the great human equalizer. Most of us have experienced something in the course of our lifetime, or will, or we know somebody who has. And then we're working with trauma clients. And so it becomes very important for us to approach this with a deep sense of understanding of what happens when we look at our lives and the kind of beliefs that are formed. And what it means for the people that I work with, the students that I work with, it makes it pretty clear to me that unless we have approaches that get to the heart of, and one of the things that I'm seeing at the heart of is, what beliefs do we have about the world around us? And how rigid do those beliefs become? When they become rigid, we absolutely have to have real practical tools that work and make a difference. Who's vulnerable? Now, because I work with such a broad spectrum of trauma survivors, I mean, everybody from the cameraman to the police officer, somebody who was in a car accident, somebody who grew up in a household where there was trauma. So many different avenues can lead to these rigidly held negative beliefs. So I'm less interested in who's vulnerable and much more interested in the pattern of beliefs that arise over time. So here are a couple of examples, and I'm actually going to focus on Peter, who is a paramedic. I work with a lot of EMS, emergency services, police, RCMP, Veterans Affairs. So let's talk about Peter. He was first on the call after an officer down event, and this is an incident in which an officer was harmed on the job. He responds. Now, Peter comes from a huge history, many years on the job, lots of exposure to numerous events, so he just assumes that he's okay. Seems like a normal response. Unfortunately, what ends up happening to Peter is somehow this officer down event becomes embedded, and he goes to the movies and he sees a chase scene and there's an officer down in the movie, and he has a panic attack in the movie theater. And he is in just a state because he can't make the connection at the moment that this is a panic attack. Despite all he knows, he goes to the hospital, And, he gets, a full workup, and they say, you're having a panic attack. This is anxiety related. And now he feels absolutely devastated. He feels like a weakling. He tells himself he's worthless. He can't go back to work. He's a helper. He's not somebody who needs help. He just can't stand this new version of his reality, the fact that he's suffering. So we start to look at it from this whole perspective of the negative beliefs. This is this negative belief, new criterion D, expectations, self-appraisal, and mood. And the way it's written is persistent trauma-related negative alterations in cognitions and mood, beginning or worsening after a traumatic event occurred, as evidenced by one or more of the following states: emotional negative states, fear, guilt, sadness, diminished interest in significant activities, socially withdrawn, reduced expression of positive emotions. So Peter is really struggling with criterion D after this event. And, he kind of says what a lot of people say: time heals all wounds. But he's in extreme pain. He's just expecting it to go away. He really is actually demanding that it goes away on his own. He's frustrated with himself. But we know that stress left unmanaged leads to all sorts of problems. And Peter's now stuck with feeling really unwell most of the time. We know that from Hans Selye's work in the 30s that diseases of adaptation occur when there's no relief. So if stress is ongoing, too frequent, too intense. So Peter's struggling. He's getting headaches. He's got chronic gastrointestinal problems. His symptoms are not getting better at all. And he's feeling like a very different man now than he was. Now, this makes sense because what happens is we only need one event to really embed and learn something. This is actually hardwired so that we can get away from danger. Unfortunately, this one-time learning has left Peter absolutely in an extreme state. There was a research project a number of years ago in which there were rats on a maze, and they put down either a liquid or food that was embedded with a substance that made the rat ill. And so the rat going on the same maze after the rat recovers will never drink or eat from the same place again. It's one-time learning, embedding so that we stay safe. It makes sense. But from an evolutionary perspective, it's true that it helps us in a lot of ways to stay safe. But if we keep remembering over and over again and telling ourselves that this world is a dangerous place, remember that if that's the theme and if that's Peter's theme, if this world is a dangerous place and everywhere I go I tell myself that, even when I'm safe, I'm going to be absolutely exhausted. Problem is that our mind is a storytelling machine that's wired to terrify us, and when we get these big dumps of adrenaline, we have a spike followed by a cortisol release, and the more adrenaline spikes we have, the longer cortisol lasts, and the longer we stay in a highly agitated state thinking about these negative things. And so it actually starts to wire in a very powerful way whatever our negative belief is. It starts to become hardwired in our brain. The more we think about something, the more we believe it. So it becomes a real powerful draw. I mean, we've all experienced clients who get so strongly wired to believe a certain thing. They just don't seem to be able to pull themselves out of it, no matter what we say. And logical, rational conversations will not change that because the wiring is so powerful. So what's happening to Peter happens to all of us. And, classical conditioning really, really helps us to understand that. This whole idea of the unconditioned stimulus, which in the case Pavlov's work is meat powder, and then a dog is exposed to meat powder, the dog drools, this is a normal response, that's the unconditioned response, and then you pair that with a conditioned stimulus, and this time it's a bell or a tone, so you're pairing the meat powder with a tone, and now the dog's salivating just listening to the tone. Well, with the Officer Down incident, it's the same thing. Peter had a real event, Officer Down. This was extremely stressful for Peter. Then he goes to the movies and he sees an officer down. He's experiencing extreme panic to the conditioned stimulus and anything that is a reminder of the officer down. It doesn't have to be the officer down anymore. It could be just watching somebody, be surprised, or, feeling that somehow things are not going his way, or going to the supermarket and somebody drops a can and he hears a bang. Whatever it is, it becomes related, and he's looking at his life and saying, this world isn't safe. All these experiences start to link together, and we start to be on a hunt for reasons to believe that this world is not safe. We're talking about Peter still. So what we need to do is find a way to help Peter face that conditioned stimuli, the things that's really not dangerous, with relaxation in order to get a new response, more relaxation, and extinguishing of the fear response. That could be pretty tricky, and we have to find pretty clever ways to get access to what's underneath the surface, the negative beliefs. Sometimes people don't even know what their negative belief is, or their cognitive distortion, but we want to get access to it. So what we do is we try to get access to it. I want to show you what we do. We want to get access to it by using a strategy of identifying negatively held fear-triggered responses, real events, and then find the theme. But before we do that, and I'm going to just be really clear, whenever I present a new approach to clients, even if I've worked with the client many, many times, I always explain the approach, confirm that they understand the approach, give time to ask questions, give consent, and confirm that they can stop whenever they've needed. I always teach them exercises for safety and stabilization before I move them into any trauma processing work. Now, Thematic Map and Release is a trauma processing work. I love using different breathing exercises, and there are a number of exercises that we have, either some of our videos that you can watch, or some of our material. We have a breath trainer that you could either access through our YouTube video link, and if people want any of these resources, we're happy to offer that to them, but you could just go to YouTube and type in 3-6 breathing, and you'll see how we use our 3-6 breathing, or go to the App Store for Breathe 911. You can also get access to the first 10 days of our video stabilization program. It's part of our trauma recovery program, which is a self-guided trauma recovery approach. And people, if they're interested in those first 10 days free, you can get that at whatisptsd.com/find-com. That is free, and it's available to anybody who goes to the What is PTSD website. What I do to get access to the themes before I start Thematic Map is I use a trigger list, and I'm very, very clear about how I start the trigger list. What I really want is experiences that are representative of the difficult things they have not been able to get over, things they might call traumatic. I put some really clear guardrails around it, 7 to 10 words maximum, a timeline when the thing happened or how old they were, and a rating. So between 1 to 10, where 1 is not at all disturbing, 10 is the worst feelings of distress, and any number in between, until they identify, let's say, whatever is on their list. Let's say they've got 5 or 7 really significant events, and they identify them like this. So I've got 4 here. In this case, this individual has had 4 significant events occur. Age 10, teased in school. Age 12, cornered by boys. Age 12, parents came to house and listened. Parents were silent. Age 27, shamed by a doctor. Now the themes are: I'm unacceptable, unlovable, rejected when people get to know me, people are cruel. So this is a very significant set of beliefs. Now, I can work with this woman focusing on the themes, or I can work with this person focusing on the memories alone. Problem with the memories is there are times when we work on the memories alone and we can actually get to resolution on the memories, but the themes stay ignited, and that's a big problem because then they remain in pain and discomfort and not able to access the content that is really disturbing to them. So before I get into the thematic map, I look at making sure that they're ready to do the trauma work, resolving danger, making sure they understand the difference between being safe and feeling safe, self-soothing, self-rescue, and practicing or demonstrating self-rescue, and then just negotiating or contracting for informed consent. This is really when we move into phase 2, and we get the opportunity to work with our clients directly on that working through trauma material. And we're getting access to the content that lays below the surface, the unconscious mind with thematic map, because you're no longer having a rational or direct conversation about the theme. You're trying to get access to it through a different stimuli. So some of the research on eye movement suggests that we are searching for information that's stored in long-term memory when we're changing our visual focus, and that these eye movements facilitate thinking, memory, and other cognitive functions. This is what I've noticed in working with my clients, that when we deliberately hold these focus points, we seem to be able to access information, historical traumas, old beliefs, feelings. It can be pretty profound because they might not be able to get so deeply connected with what's happening to them based on the things that they say to themselves. So it's a deliberate hunt for thoughts, emotions, and body sensations that go along with the theme that the individual is struggling with. Posted 2 video links, and one of the video links that we have is a long one and one is a short one. And the nice thing about the video links is they take the long one takes you through an entire session with a client. The short video link actually just gives you a short form, and I always start, usually I will capture the theme in the previous session because there's not enough time to both capture the theme and do a complete thematic map and release. Usually it will take me a full 50-minute, 50 or 45 minute to finish thematic map and release. I like to take my time, and with each focus point, we go through a script. There's nobody here on the line, I believe, other than, I think Jane said that she's using the Trauma Practice Manual, the book that was released in January this year, and it has the full script. But for people who are interested in the script and the template for thematic map, that will be made available as well. So now we're going to rate the theme once we have it, explain thematic map and release, and I like to do all of this in the session before and get permission to use thematic map and release with my clients. I get all of that prior to the session where I'm working with thematic map and release. The other thing that I've done is I've put together about a 5-minute video that gives just the kind of short form of doing one of the focus points, so that if a client finds this exercise very helpful, I can give them the link and then they can just watch the video of that so that they can harness this sensation for themselves. The other nice thing is once I've done this once with a client, if they come in and they have another theme, we can jump right into thematic map and release with the material. So here's thematic map and release. This is the template. This one is actually missing the lower 2 points. So we start with point 1, and you'll see here that's for emotion, thoughts, and body sensations. And then here you'll see GS, that's grains of sand. And then below that is hands and body. And they're just cues to help the practitioner keep focused on the task at hand. So you would go with focus point 1, then below focus point 2. It's below this one. You just can't see it on your screen. Then we go to the next one, which is below 6 here, up to 4. Then we go lateral, 5, 6, and then straight ahead, 7. Now, the script, and I don't know how many people have had a chance to use this, watch the script on the video, but when you do, you start to understand how powerful it is for a client going through the material. But as I said, we find the core theme and rate it. We explain the approach and gain permission. We practice the imagination. We test the first focus point and ask, is it okay to continue? And we repeat for each of the 6 points. Now, I've added this link here. You'll see Psych Inc., TickLearn, Thematic Map Release. If you want to get access to the scripts, the materials related, then just go to that link and you'll be able to get access to it there. The next thing that I want to do is I actually want to give you a brief overview of this and just walk you through the short form of just one focus point.
This is a release exercise. Think about this. We've all been to some place where there's a sandy beach, and you know what it feels like to have a handful of warm sand.
Yep.
You know that feeling?
Yep.
You know how nice that is?
Yep.
And then you also know the feeling of having that sand spilling through your fingers and how nice that feels.
Yep.
You just close your eyes for a minute and just imagine yourself doing that. Tell me when you have that.
I do.
Okay. So you can picture the feeling of the release that goes along with that.
Yeah.
Now the next piece of release is I want you to imagine inside of yourself that you're an empty vessel filling with sand from the top of your head. And the sand fills in like an hourglass, slowly filling up, going into the front and back of your face, down your neck, into your shoulders, down your arms, into the core of the body, down your legs, past your shins and calves, into your feet. And when it gets to the tips of the toes and the tips of your fingers, I want you to actually picture that the sand is being released, just spilling out and away from you. And tell me when you have that feeling.
I do.
Good. Okay, now bring your awareness back into the room. Yep, absolutely. So now what I'm going to have you do is just notice all of that. I want you to harness your imagination, use your mind to harness that powerful imagination. Open up your hands and let them rest on your lap. And I want you to picture that you've got 2 large, warm, heavy, dry handfuls of sand, and the sensation of the warmth moves deeply into the center of the palms of your hands, and it feels soothing as it moves up your arms and into your shoulders. I want you to get the sensation of that warmth being very comforting in the center of the palms of your hands. I want you to get the sensation of the grains of sand that's spilling through your slightly parted fingers, just down and away, getting the sensation of release. And just allow yourself to do that. And then focusing inside of yourself, again using your mind to harness your imagination, picturing that you are an empty vessel, filling with sand from the top of your head. The sand spills in, filling in slowly, moving into the front and back of the face, down your neck, into your shoulders, down your arms, into the core of your body, down your legs, through to the tips of the toes and tips of the fingertips, just releasing. I want you to just allow yourself to picture that for a moment. Now I want you to get the sensation of all those thoughts, the emotions and body sensations, the feeling of being cold, the sensation of surprise, of pressure, the words being a shock. But all of that attached to the grains of sand, which are carried down and away, spilling out the tips of the toes and fingertips, and just allow yourself to have that sensation. Just do whatever you need to do to bear witness, being a compassionate observer to that storyline as you release. And then I want you to bring your awareness back into the room, and I want you to just notice what you're aware of.
Just notice how you feel right now and allow yourself, if you need to practice again, to focus on releasing thoughts, emotions, and body sensations as best as you can to help you get through your day.
And I just want to say that the resource for all those videos and the material are available. I just wanted you to get a sense of a review of that content and why we're getting the kind of results we are with clients when we use the material. Is there seems to be this access, first of all, to the negative beliefs, and then there is this very, very deliberate focus on release and an opportunity to get access to our own harnessing calm capacity while we're facing this negative belief. And so the kinds of results that we're seeing are quite interesting, because people who have been holding on to old stories or old negative beliefs, like this individual has quite a significant trauma history, but was carrying on a belief everywhere he went that he was going to be at risk of somehow losing his safe and stable base in life. He just always felt that he was at risk. And it didn't seem to make any difference what he was doing in life or who he was interacting with. This was something that would always come to the surface, leaving him feeling greatly at risk. So what I want to do is leave you with this material, and also just talk a little bit briefly about some of the resources. So if I'm working with a client and they haven't yet been able to integrate fully, and I'm at the end of my session, I might use some steel vault imagery, and we have another video that's linked to this. Again, I'm not going to show it because I understand that we might lose our bandwidth, so I'm not going to show that one. But I might close off the session using something like the internal vault, and I have a video to demonstrate that, or grounding light stream. And again, if people want those videos or any of the materials that we have available, like this material is actually all free. It's just available to people who subscribe to the YouTube channel What is PTSD, and we are releasing weekly videos on trauma growth and recovery, different things that we're working with, ideas and materials that might be helpful. And as well, if a client is not able to fully integrate, or they recognize that they're stuck and they need a practice to take home with them to help them through something that hasn't fully resolved in the course of our session, I might give them the self-compassion reflection exercise. And in this one, it's about 10 minutes. And it really gives them just a chance to integrate this idea of, directing a sense of self-compassion towards themselves. And we're getting a lot of good feedback on that one as well. For people who are not familiar with our trauma recovery program, it's a self-directed program, and that's where a lot of the videos come from that might be of interest. So if people want to get access to the 10 days free, you'll see here it says resources. You just select resources, and Find Calm is in this resource section. You can just log into that and get access to those 10 free videos. So we know that certain things in our lives can have indelible, distressing impact, and a recognition of that is so important, because I really see that it's the negative beliefs that we carry with us that keep us from being able to move forward and then live our lives as well today as we can. I'm going to just leave this for now and ask, are there questions or things that you want covered before I finish? And I want to just thank you for your time today.
Anna.
I'm on the phone now. That's interesting. Your numerical points in the positions on the chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are you using a theoretical rationale for the order of where you'll use your points?
Oh, that's a great question. You know what? I have to tell you that this whole thing came to me in a dream. I know that sounds really ridiculous, but the reality is the whole map came to me in a dream one night. I was thinking about a client of mine who was very, very badly bullied over the course of about 10 years. And he had these terribly negative beliefs. And every time we had a session, I saw his eyes roaming and wandering. And so I was trying to remember what he was doing and talking about. And all of a sudden, this map just came into my head. I'm just playing with it. I started to use it with clients who were willing to practice new things. So whenever I work with something new, I always tell my clients, you know, this is a new approach. I want to tell you what we're doing. I explain it to them, and if they're willing, if they're open to try it out, that's great. So the reality is I started to look for the theoretical underpinnings after the map came to me.
That's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So it's not, you know, it's not until I really started to think about what was happening with the client that I came to this kind of the layout of all of this. And you know, and I guess this is where, you know, the strangest things can happen. I'm sure everybody is familiar with mirror neurons and how you know, this little laboratory in Parma, Italy, they had these monkeys hooked up to these brain scans, and what they were doing is, you know, the monkeys would have these peanuts, and the monkeys would open up the peanuts, and then you'd see their brains kind of lighting up in certain areas, and then all of a sudden there was an event in which the monkey saw a researcher opening up a peanut, and all of their same brain areas started to light up. Totally not by design. They discovered something that was really remarkable. So this is kind of like how I came up with this idea of where the ordering of the focus points were. Completely by random, watching my clients searching in their own minds for material or talking about something that was very traumatic in their lives. So as I said before, what I want to do is, if people are interested in the material and you want to try it out on your own, we're actually in the process of looking at Thematic Map and Release as it is embedded in the trauma practice approach with York University. So we're in the middle of developing the protocols for the research project right now. So if people are interested and established trauma therapists and want to be involved in a research project, then please do let us know as well, because we are trying to form partnerships with different organizations or clinicians in the community or at universities, wherever you are, in order to create a good study. So that's something else, just in case you have interest in doing that. Okay, so Jane and Carol, I'm going to hand it back to you, and if you want to close out, that's great.
Anna, this is Carol. I did have one question. Do you find that clients need to do a thematic map and release with each theme or memory? Or do you find sometimes that clients will spontaneously apply a thematic map and release session from a given memory that you've worked with together to other memories or themes in their lives spontaneously? Or do you find a mix of that?
Yeah, so that's actually really good. Okay, so I'm going to go back to what I talked before about the trigger list. Usually, clients will identify a whole series of events that then they can recognize, create, or form a theme. People tend to have fewer themes than memories. In general, just as in doing good trauma work, clients might spontaneously resolve other traumas that are somehow related or trigger in a similar way. When you do a good trauma therapy session, whatever approach you're using, you might find that they might be focused on a car accident that they had 10 years ago, but when they think of the one that they had 12 years ago, that also feels more resolved after the good trauma work you did on the more recent trauma accident. So in the same way, I've been finding that if somebody struggles with a theme, they may also be able to apply what they are, their mechanism for resolution. Sometimes what I've been hearing from clients is that when I give them the little link to the short session, they can use that approach, just turn it on and kind of embed the strategies themselves. If there's a new theme and it's more complex and they are struggling with it, sometimes they'll bring it to session and we'll just start from scratch. But there are clients who are using the short link, the 5-minute video that I tried to show you, and that seems to help quite a bit. Because the work takes a whole hour, the strategy is so easy to learn, clients are able to adapt the guided portion of the work to their own struggles when they're on their own and reflecting. So yes.
I have a follow-up question as well. I watched the relatively short version with your work with Sebastian, who looks a lot like Robert De Niro. At least in the video he does. He could have a second career being his stand-in. I'm wondering if the method of effectiveness is the repeated exposure, or is it the repeated exposure paired with the relaxing and self-care, or is it also somehow integrally tied with the various eye positions, or is it simply the repetition of going through the theme and then the subjective units of distress at each of these 7 times?
Okay, good questions. First, I don't ask for the subjective units of distress until the very end. I ask once in the beginning, then I ask at the very, very end.
Okay.
I don't go back over and over again. What I really want to gain access to is what is the content at each focus point. Now, it's very interesting because I've had hundreds, I've done hundreds and hundreds of sessions already with Thematic Map and Release, and at each focus point we get different content. We get access to different content.
That's key.
That's what I want to do.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's really interesting, Carol. It's Carol, right? It's really interesting, Carol, because I'm not getting the same thing at each focus point. I'm getting different content at each focus point.
Okay.
They may talk about body.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It gets into areas that are so deeply embedded, and I think that's why it's effective, because normally we might have a talk session with a client. We don't get access to this content, and even if we do get access to the content, I don't necessarily have a contract in that session to then take them to release. So if they get access to a deep sense of vulnerability. Oh, you know, my mother was so mean to me. I was 5 years old and I felt mortally rejected, whatever it is, whatever the story is.
Right.
We get access to that. What are we going to do with it? In a talk session, we won't get access to the release because we don't have the contract necessarily. We might get some release, but once we get access to that piece, then we might get access to another piece. Oh, I feel this wound in my body, or I sense the shame, or I remember my sister, you know, also saying nasty things to me, or when I went to school, people were rejecting. So because it's a theme, we can get access to many different stories, content, emotions that come from different places or points in our lives. So it's about getting access to the content. The release piece, you know, just, you know, going back to this idea of exposure and relaxation, we get extinction, but because we're looking at a theme and these themes are hooked into memories, it's profound because now we're getting access to so much material so rapidly. And I think that's why, you know, with Sebastian, here's a client who's been, you know, working to feel better and struggling, and he made this very radical shift in a very rapid session, like, you know, a 50-minute session, 47 minutes, I think, in total for him.
Wow. One other follow-up question, and this is a little bit geeky, forgive me for that. I noticed when you were asking Sebastian in the video for his emotions and feelings related to the theme, he stayed in a really sort of cognitive mindset where he said surprise and dry mouth and feel my hands get cold, those kinds of things. I didn't hear any of the sort of the primary emotion labels like I feel afraid, I feel ashamed, I'm sad. And I'm wondering if do you do any work where you ask clients to develop an emotional vocabulary and facility with using these sort of primary emotional words, or do you just let it go with whatever emotional vocabulary they are choosing to use?
So if I find that somebody's staying too intellectual, and you know, it's interesting that you're saying this. Sebastian was virtually on the point of tears from the beginning of the session. Obviously, in a video, it's hard to see it.
Yes.
You're not looking at him directly in the eyes. If somebody stays in too cognitive of a state, I would obviously pull them out of that and ask them to stay more connected with the content or their experience. And yes, if they are not able to access it, I'm going to help guide them a little bit. But I would probably have done a lot of that before I even start the thematic map.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because once you're into the stuff of it, you know, I might gently guide them back to their experience. But I would have wanted to do a lot of that in advance.
That makes sense. I'm reminded of a client that I worked with early on when I was just a master's level student in an internship setting. And she was working her way through a divorce, and you know, I did the old, you know, wet behind the ears young counselor question. I said, so when you think about this impending divorce, how does that make you feel? And I was like, oh God, not that question, please avoid that question. But her answer was just shocked me. She just said, it makes me feel resolute. And as a young therapist, I had no idea what to do with a feeling that was expressed as resolute. I didn't know what to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have learned since then to kind of help clients find words for their experiences and to, as you say, you know, build safe containers to hold those feelings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that peeling back of the layers that I think it becomes more available as your clinical skills, I mean, obviously you know this, as your clinical skills become more practiced,
Intuitive?
the words just become available to get people there. And there's a feeling, I think people have that sense and that feeling when there's knowledge and there's a containing vessel and you create it in the room, clients feel it. They know that there's going to be sufficient sturdiness for them to do that work.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that I think that using approaches that get access to the unconscious mind, these layers of beliefs that can, follow somebody even when they've done excellent trauma work, getting access to it is really important. So, I just like what I find when I've done a very extensive trigger list and then, peel back all of that and say, well, when you look at all of these 20 things on your trigger list, what weaves them together? What's similar or familiar? And reading through all the 20 items and writing out the SUDS rating for each of them seems to prime them and make access those themes in a way that just a normal conversation might not. And then I can do that work.
That's fascinating. Yes, that makes sense.
Any other questions? Any kind of thoughts? Like I said, I'll make sure that the scripts are available. And are you going to be teaching your students this material?
I have the book and I have not read through it yet. I will use the book in the course. I'm trying to figure out a safe and experiential way to use the material with these inexperienced students because they haven't even gone through their internships yet.
They are not.
So I'm trying to figure out what's a safe way to use the material.
Yeah. I get that. That's a really, really good question. So what year are they? Are they all graduate students?
They're master's level students, and they're adding to their master's degree a certificate of studies in violence, loss, and trauma. And this particular course is the advanced trauma treatment. So I'm looking at like complex trauma and people with dual diagnosis and how do you manage these sort of worst case cases.
Right, that's excellent. And actually Thematic Map and Release is well suited to this because it creates that holding container and gets access to multiple traumas, themes relating to multiple traumas.
That's terrific, yeah. I'm exceptionally happy about your and Eric's book because the students are voraciously hungry for tools that they can use. And this book goes beyond all of the other books that are out there that are full of theory and full of shoulds and generalities, but this provides specific tools. And the students are very appreciative of that.
So you might want to get, if they're very hungry for tools, you might want to get them to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the What is PTSD channel on YouTube, because like I said, we're releasing the videos once a week. So, they're really, most of them are filled with suggestions, tips, exercises. Like we just released a 27-minute sleep exercise, and people are just they're just so excited about it. I think in a month we had like almost 900 hits on the video because people are just using it, they're sharing it, and they're excited about it, and they're interested in the approach. And we're getting emails from people, feedback about the sleep video. People who haven't been able to go to sleep are sleeping with this video, so it's really great and very practical.
And one of the main questions that comes up in my classes frequently is from students is how can we sleep better? The students themselves are stressed because, as we all know, they frequently have trauma backgrounds themselves.
Exactly.
And they're in grad school, and that's a stressful experience in and of itself. And sleep deprivation is a common theme in our students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're welcome to, email just send me an email and I'll get Mandy to send you the sleep deck that we have. That's there are a couple of things. It's the video and strategies, tools, and tips material that we have that you can share with your students as well.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great. I am so grateful for your time. I'm very aware that it is now 2 o'clock and a lot of us have schedules.
Yes.
And meetings that we have to take. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I'll follow up with you to see if there's anything that we should add to our Traumatology Interest Network website in follow-up to this presentation for our members. Thank you again so much.
My pleasure, and have a great day, and thank you for the invitation, and let us know if there's anything we can do, and feel free to use all our resources. Enjoy the day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.